Hello, everyone. This is group number 1. I'm Ryan Holman. Unfortunately, my partner, Deanna Weesey, cannot be with us because of certain circumstances. But it's pretty cool that we get to do this online today. So today we'll be explaining the decline of the coal industry and the rise of the natural gas industry. And these little boxes that you're going to see on the slides is just where we got the images from. Okay, so before we dived right into our topic, we wanted to give background information on the coal industry. And as you can see, we got this from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. So the coal industry was first found in the United States during the 1950s. However, during this time, wood was still used as a resource for heating and for energy, especially in people's homes. But as that started to decline and people realized it wasn't sufficient enough for an energy source or wasn't as reliable, they began to switch to coal, which it began to replace the wood in the early 1900s. However, it didn't really start to kick in until the 1920s, because that's when it became popular. But they basically discovered coal through mine shafts. So now going into the use of coal, and we got this from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. So coal is used, obviously, to heat homes, businesses, and fast food places because it's an energy source. It helps produce electricity, and it's used so much because it is so cheap to get. In 2018, according to the EIA, the coal only costed around $35.99 per short ton, which is extremely cheap. And it's inexpensive because it is found within the United States in our borders, so we don't have to import it from other countries. Okay, so now into what exactly coal is made of. So coal is made out of sulfur, hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen. And once these elements are burned, they produce emissions. And emissions are greenhouse gases that affect and harm the ozone layer. And for those of you that don't know, the ozone layer is a protective shield of the Earth's atmosphere that protects us and the vegetation and the Earth from the sun's rays and radiation. So if this is damaged, then this is what global warming stems from and what climate change stems from. So the emissions are carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, mercury, heavy metals, nitrogen dioxide. And this is what is released when coal is burned. And we got this information from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the pros and cons of the coal industry. And basically we put the pros in to give you guys a glimpse of to why the coal industry is still used today. So the main reason why it is still used today is because it is so good for our economy. It takes up such a large part of the economy, especially because it's a major energy source in our economy, and because it also provides thousands of jobs to people. And it's very inexpensive, and it's widely available across the country because, again, there are major coal deposits within our borders, so we don't need to transport them from other countries or other areas. However, even though there are many pros, there are also so many cons that outweigh the pros. So the cons start from extraction to when it is produced. So during extraction, miners use the use of explosives, since coal sits underground, to get beneath the Earth's surface and reach these levels. So when they're demolishing and blowing up the landscape, this is affecting the ecosystem around it. First of all, the chemicals that are released from the coal deposits, which are uncovering, are, again, greenhouse emissions. So when these emissions are released, they go into the atmosphere and damage the ozone layer. However, they also damage the air quality. And that air quality is what we breathe every single day. And because if we have a poor air quality, this is where illnesses such as cancer, specifically lung cancer, and many other problems within the human body arise because of breathing in this toxic air. And another way is it affects the wildlife. So if there's runoff of these chemicals that go into the water and into the soil, the water and soil is now contaminated. And the soil is used for, let's say, to grow farms. and to grow plants. So if you're having a food source and trying to grow things around it, or even just regular forest and nature and vegetation, it's not going to grow the best that it can because it is growing in toxic soil. And again, also in these rivers, there's aquatic life and fish, and animals drink from these rivers. So it's really a cycle of affecting everyone. And all this information comes from one of the scholarly journals we have, which is Population Cancer Risks Associated with Coal Mining, a systematic review, and it also comes from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. Okay, so now fixing the issue that is caused by the coal industry. And we got this information also from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. And basically, they actually stated that the Clean Air Act was passed to limit the amount of emissions that are released into the environment from coal production. So governments across the world, and specifically in our country, have implemented laws, which one, in the United States is the Clean Air Act, to limit the amount of production that the coal industry has. So instead of operating all year round, they're going to only operate for a few months out of the whole year, or they limit the expansion that they can do of the power plant. And because of all these limitations and laws that were put into place by the government, the coal industry decided to switch and start replacing it with natural gas, because natural gas isn't really researched and there's not many laws that restrict the natural gas industry. Because if you think about it, these are still businesses. Businesses are in it for the money and to maximize the amount of profit that they make. So they're looking for every single way to ensure that this happens. So now diving into the switch of natural gas. And this was also from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. These are different articles that we gathered this information from, but it is a organization from the government. So yes, we took a lot from it. So the industry was first created within the 1930s. It started to pick up momentum in the early 1970s. Since, again, health effects of the coal industry were researched and found that it greatly affected the environment, the population, and the climate. So because of that, natural gas is replacing coal energy as a energy source. So continuing from the last slide, coal obviously is an energy source and is used in many different aspects of our lives. So natural gas is now replacing that. And because of that, these quotes are actually from a scholarly journal that we found, which is below and stated. And they stated that the natural gas is the most popular fuel for residential heating, according to American Gas Association, where 51% of the heated homes in the U.S. used natural gas heating in 2000. So basically, natural gas is used as heating and cooling systems in homes, which replaces what coal used to do. And then it goes on to state that it provides 13% of the energy used in commercial cooling, but this percentage is expected to increase due to technological innovations in commercial natural gas cooling techniques. So basically, this is also being used in businesses around the country because it is also inexpensive. There's not many restrictions put on it, and people are starting to look for new energy sources. And the last quote that we got from the same journal states that natural gas is used primarily in the metal, chemical, petroleum refining, stone, clay, and glass, pulp and paper, plastic, and food processing industries. So basically now it's also being used as an energy source for industries that run our entire country, and it's also used in large corporations. So basically, natural gas is slowly starting to replace every single other energy source because it's becoming more available. Okay, so now that we got past the history of natural gas, we're going to start talking about the impact it has. And the first impact that it has, which is the environmental impact it has, and we also got this from the Union of Concerned Scientists, which is another organization. And basically, they stated that the leakage of methane, primary component of natural gas, that is 35 times stronger than the CO2 at trapping heat over a 100-year period and 86 times stronger over 20 years. So basically, methane is extremely toxic. It also speeds up global warming, it speeds up climate change, it still damages our ozone layer. So yes, even though it is not the same emissions that are being released from coal, it is just another emission that affects the environment just as badly. And then they also went on to state that some areas where drilling occurs have experienced increases in concentrations of hazardous air pollutants and 2 of the 6 criteria pollutants. So also, this is affecting the air quality of surrounding areas, surrounding communities. So again, as these people are breathing this in, they are damaging their body, damaging their systems, which again gives rise to disease. So basically, even though natural gas is burning different emissions and burning different elements, it is still highly toxic to the atmosphere and the air. So now diving into the impact it has on the communities and human population, which we got from another scholarly journal, which is stated below on the PowerPoint. And basically, they stated that the exposure to air pollution associated with UN GDP with increased risk of subchronic health effects, adverse birth outcomes, including congenital heart defects and neural tube defects. So yes, even though it's going to release less emissions, it's still going to affect a wide range of people. And this quote most specifically focuses on women that are pregnant. And as you can see, it's affecting the child within the womb, which will give rise to them being born with birth defects. And the emissions that has each year, yes, it still, again, affects the air quality. So now moving on to the next quote, which is also from the same source. They stated that soil may be contaminated by drilling fluids, flowback, produced waters, and other wastes which may contain numerous contaminants, including radionuclides. So this makes the area, the ecosystem, the vegetation, extremely toxic around it because it is, again, releasing chemicals into the environment. It is releasing into the soil, to the water, and into the air. And all of this affects the environment. So yes, coal does the same thing. So comparing it back to that, they basically both are in a cycle of affecting the ecosystem around, which also affects us because we eat animals and plants that are within that ecosystem. So Deanna and I wanted to include a slide about Cricket Valley Energy because Cricket Valley Energy is actually located in our area. So we actually drive past it all the time, especially on our way to school. And basically, Cricket Valley Energy is a natural gas power plant that is located in Dover Plains, New York, 80 miles north of New York City. It releases an immense amount of emissions. It's a 193-acre piece of property, which again, since it's so large, they had to take down a lot of trees in the area and a lot of wooded areas. The power plant is used to produce energy for cities in Westchester County and New York City. So basically, when we walk outside and we look and we see those smokestacks, they're pumping out smoke 24/7. And that is affecting the community around. It's affecting us. We're breathing in this air. We are breathing in the emissions. We're breathing in the toxic chemicals that are released into the air. And we wanted to include this because Cricket Valley Energy is right in our area. So we wanted to add a little personal touch to it. And if you look actually behind, that's a picture of Cricket Valley Energy. It's not an actual picture, but it's the architect's design of it. And basically our citation came straight from the Cricket Valley Energy website. Thank you everyone for coming to watch and listen to what we had to say. But basically to sum everything up, as one energy source declines, another one inclines. And just because one is worse, there's still another one that's going to be even worse or a little better, but still going to be bad for the environment. So instead of using natural gas or coal, we should be looking at using energy sources such as wind and solar power, because they don't release emissions into the air and don't release emissions and contaminate the environment around. So again, thank you guys.